What is your approach to marketing your SaaS? Because one of the most common questions I get asked from my audience is, bro, I know how to build, I'm a developer, but I don't know how to market, dude. Like, how do I market as a developer? Do you regret raising any money? And do you think that you could have done it without any venture capital money? What is the worst money that you have spent on your business? In today's video, I sit down and chat with the founder who went through Y Combinator 2 years ago and raised some money from both YC as well as angel investors. And I talk about what his journey has been like as a founder who has raised some money. And I compare his own founder journey of building his own SaaS product versus my founder journey as a bootstrapped founder who has never quit his job, has always done this on the side part-time, and has also never raised any money to build any of my apps. I think it's a really good insight into the whole VC versus bootstrapped realm, some of the pros and cons of each. And going through this conversation, it turns out that there's actually a lot more in common that we have rather than things that are really different. In this video, we go over his journey of starting out working at a big tech company and then transitioning into creating his own startup and going through YC, what it was like when he first got that $500,000 wired into his bank account, some of his favorite marketing tactics to grow his startup. We compare our marketing strategies to compare our various SaaS products because they are quite different. And then at the very end, we have a couple of rapid fire questions where we go over stuff such as some of the best and worst ways he spent money to grow his business. And before we get into this video, I have two small favors to ask. Number one is the fact that by watching this video, you actually did not click on a free video. You have to pay a little bit. But the currency that you have to pay with is by liking this video and hitting that subscribe button. It's called the gentleman's agreement. I can't keep you accountable. Nobody can, but it is a gentleman's agreement. It is up to you to honor your part of the gentleman's agreement. Watch the video, like it, hit that subscribe button. And number two is if you're enjoying this type of long form content where I chat with other founders, a little different from what I'm currently doing on my channel. And if you do like it, then make sure to leave some comments down below letting me know that you do, so I know to make more of this type of content in the future. All right, enough of me yapping. Let's get into the actual video. Dude, Alex, thanks so much for hopping on this call and doing this little video with me. I'm super excited to kind of chat about our different founder journeys, about, you've raised VC money or you've raised money in general. And I am a super strong proponent of the bootstrap founder, bootstrap developer, solo developer type shit on my channel. So super excited to chat about our different founder journeys and what's similar and what's different.
Absolutely. Can't wait.
All right.
A founder is a founder as a founder at the end of the day.
Bars. Okay, so for those that are watching this video for the first time or coming to this channel for the first time, my name is Your Average Tech Bro. I make videos on the internet and I also build apps on the side while working my full-time job. Since 2021, I built 13, 14 different apps, completely part-time, never raised any money, all completely bootstrapped. But the guest joining me in today's video, his name is Alex. He is a college friend of mine, and he actually has gone a completely different angle where he is building his own startup, but he actually went through Y Combinator, raised a little bit of money, and is not doing the bootstrapped route. So this video, we're gonna just talk about the differences, the similarities about our journeys into being a founder. So Alex, why don't you do a quick little intro about yourself?
Totally. Hey, my name's Alex. I'm the co-founder of Magic Patterns. We did the Y Combinator Winter 23 batch. We've pivoted during YC. We have been at this full time now for 2 years, but in terms of the number of projects we've built in that 2-year period, it's been something like 6 or 7. So happy to be here and to chat.
Yeah, super cool. All right. So I know a little bit about your background, but definitely feel free to add other things that I might not know about either. But why don't we do a quick overview about what you did from college? We both graduated college in 2019, and where you went from 2019 to now and doing YC and what that journey looked like.
Absolutely. So after graduating college, I studied computer science, and my co-founder and I think that'll be a recurring theme as we talk. I'm constantly mentioning my co-founder because that was a big part of doing it full time and the venture-backed journey, right? Like, it's no secret that YC really encourages you to have a co-founder. But my co-founder and I have been building projects together for a long time. We lived in San Francisco together. He worked at Robinhood and I worked at LiveRamp, publicly traded company. We worked as engineers. And then after that, I joined as an early employee, the first employee actually, at another YC company. Then encouraged my co-founder, my now co-founder, to join as the second employee. We were both engineers there. We saw it grow to 20 employees, but then ultimately decided to start our own and apply to YC.
And through that application process of getting into YC, could you tell me quick overview of what the application process was like and what, I guess, your experience doing YC was like as well?
My first thing to say to everyone watching this, apply to YC. Even if you don't even actually press submit, the exercise of going through the questions really helps you think through your idea, right? And the problem that you're solving. More importantly, the problem, not the solution. We applied to YC actually with a college project that we then, 5 years later, as after working in the full time for a while, revamped it and had actually monetized it. It was a text message analyzer, and we charged $2.99 a month for people to see their top words, their top emojis, how many ha-has they got in a group chat, and people paid for it. Very little. And that's another recommendation I have to people who are interested in applying to YC. A great way to know if people want something, right? Make it something people want, charge for it. So in our instance, very little people were paying, but they were paying. We applied to YC. Shockingly, we got in. And, first thing they tell us is, hey, look, this is your company. You can do whatever you'd like. However, text message analytics, consumer is not a good idea. We would recommend you do something else. Right? Yeah. So happy to talk more about like the pivot and things like that.
Yeah. Quick question, when you got into YC and then the check, I think you were part of the batch when it was $500,000, right? Of the check? Dude,
yes.
What's it like when the money comes into your bank account? Are you like, holy hell, I'm rich, bro? What was the feeling like when that happened?
Honestly, that's funny. I don't think anyone has ever asked me that, and I haven't even thought of that moment since it happened because it was so inconsequential in the sense like it truly is not your money, right? It's in the company bank account. And obviously, as the founder, we have the discretion on how to spend it. But we have taken our approach really is very prudent growth. So we still have spent very little of it. But, I immediately wasn't like, even 500K, right? It is a lot of money for just two people. And that's great because, one thing that I think is so awesome about like not bootstrapping is if you're never going to start the company because you need capital to get started, given your circumstances, then yeah, you should raise money. Like if the distinction is not start company or raise money, you should start the company, right? And raise money.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point because I think you're right. Like some people that are going the bootstrapped route, I personally think the craziest thing that people do is quitting their stable day job, not raising any money, and going all in to build something without any safety net to fall back on. Like that to me is super high risk because maybe you'll feel this way since you've also gone through like a lot of pivots in the process until you found something that has some product market fit and where you're actually making some money, and me as well. But it took way longer than I ever expected to reach that stage where I'm actually making some money from a product. I know like back in like the early 2000s and early 2010s, like the startup meta was, bro, you got to give up everything, pay yourself jack shit. Like you got to grind and like you need to want it so bad. But I feel like the meta has really changed lately to be like, no, like raise money, pay yourself a livable wage, get your livable expenses in order, and that'll help you become a better founder. You're not making like short-term decisions that you would be if you were insanely cash strapped,
That's a good point. One of the most surprising things about my own personal life after becoming a founder full-time, though, at these other companies, I was making traditional engineer salary, right? In the realm of 150K right out of college. I make way less than that now. I realize like I also don't need that much. Like it is so much more fun working on my own thing. Like I would take that trade-off, like money versus being able to work on my own fulfilling thing, like 10 times out of 10. That's not to prescribe it to somebody, right? I'm very lucky in that I don't have extraordinary debt or things like that, right? So I'm not to say that's one size fits all. It's just, it's really surprising to me. Like I realized how much money you actually like don't need.
Yeah. Totally agree with that. I realized that we actually never talked about what exactly you build. Can you tell us a little bit about what Magic Patterns currently is? And then also your first iteration of the product, which is called Mirrorful, and what that pivot journey looked like. Like maybe some timeline as well, like how long it took to build out Mirrorful, how long you were pursuing it, and then what made you eventually switch and pivot to Magic Patterns, and maybe talk a little bit about the growth and what that timeline looked like as well.
Magic Patterns is an AI prototyping tool built for product teams. You can create a functional front end, deploy it to your own website, sync to GitHub, export to Figma. We have many, many customers that include PwC, Air Canada, NASCAR, but then also small hobbyists. I'm sure actually some members of your channel, I can almost guarantee it, are customers of ours. Part of me wants to say it's been a long journey, but it's also just gone by in the blink of an eye. We got into YC. They recommended we pivot because we were doing a consumer iMessage analytics idea. We have always really enjoyed front end and building building UI and design tooling. Our first idea was a Chrome extension that basically grabbed all the HTML and then instantly spun up like a preview. Because by grabbing all the HTML, like let's say you're on localhost, it grabs all the HTML and then you can just share that link with anybody, and a product manager or designer could see an engineer's local host like immediately. What's funny is like the technology from that Chrome extension then ended up playing a role in a feature that we built for Magic Patterns where you can grab HTML and then convert it to a React component and then use AI to edit that React component. And that's a recurring theme. Like another thing we did during YC, for a week, we're building an AI landing page generator. At the time, only GPT 3.5 was out. Absolutely sucked. The models were so bad, like, almost gave up in the sense of like, this belief of like AI is not going anywhere. That is one big mistake that I think we made, is like not early on recognizing like the scaling laws and that it is going to get better. And now I can very confidently say, after having been in the space for 2 years and testing every single model that comes out, it's only going to get better and better. But it was very bad. And, we did like a templated approach because you couldn't really like edit anything. Like the context window is so small. And then toward the end at YC Demo Day, we had a product called Mireful, which was a design system manager where you could manage your component library, but it would all export out to code. So it was a web platform where a developer and designers could interact, publish components, kind of like Storybook on steroids.
Got it. And then you eventually did make that pivot to Magic Patterns. What gave you that conviction to ditch Miraful, which I know you worked on for a really long time, and then kind of move on to the next product? Because I know even for myself as a founder, I'm not shy to mention on my channel that over the past 3-4 years at this point, I built like 13 different apps. And I know that shutting down a product that you work really, really long on to build something else always kind of sucks. And it's not an easy decision to ever make. For you, what was your tipping point that made you make that pivot?
Yeah, it was August 2023. We've been working on this design system management platform, again, Storybook on steroids, for about 4 months. We had a couple customers, but the big thing was they weren't using it. The customers were not using it. And that's a big distinction and a big learning. So we talked about how like, okay, people pay you. Great. Like that is one sign you're creating value and you're making something people want, but they need to use it too. And you can fall into this trap where people say like, I love your product. If they say that and they don't use it, they absolutely do not love your product. That is just them being nice. And so, yeah, these customers weren't using it. And there were some scaling issues, like because it was a design system management platform and we were exporting code, it can be very custom how our different component libraries set up and things like that. And by this point, like it was pretty clear, this was maybe 6 months, 7 months after the release of ChatGPT. It was clear like, hey, these models are getting better. There's this rumor of either GPT-4 or it's about to come out. Fine tuning had come out. And so we had an internal hackathon where I messed around with fine-tuning a model, like using OpenAI's API, and my co-founder built a catalog of React components. That ended up getting #1 on Product Hunt. We ended up seeing how magical AI is, and then the next day we're like, hey, what if we merge this using AI to generate React components?
Very cool. Very cool. Now, can you also talk a little bit about the money that you raised and what that process looked like? You don't have to give actual numbers or anything. I mean, I think everyone knows that YC has a standard deal, $500,000, but maybe just in general, like what it was like fundraising, who you raised from in general, like high level overview. Yeah, could you tell us about that process?
Yeah, so we raised $500K from YC. That's no secret. Everyone gets the same terms. What's really interesting about YC, you can have 2 hackers who just have an idea, or companies that are doing a lot in millions in revenue, and it's still the same standard deal. At Demo Day, we raised from some angels, had been pivoting all during the batch, didn't really have a product. We had like 2 customers. We definitely were in the bottom half, near the bottom of, Demo Day outcome success, right? Where that's defined as how much money do you raise? Because we really just raised from angels. And I think that was fully expected given our situation at the time, where my main advice for fundraising, it's a really good test how much conviction and confidence you have in your own product. It's crazy how much easier fundraising is now. Like when a customer signs up for Magic Patterns and they say, hey, I love your product so much, can I give an angel check?
Oh.
And we hop on the phone. That's happened many times now. #1, you feel like you don't really need the money because you have revenue coming in. #2, you just have this confidence about your product that like is so natural. Versus, at Demo Day, we had like 1 customer. There was really no confidence. It was all like fake it till you make it. And And I definitely don't recommend that. Well, obviously that does work. I'm sure there's amazing fundraisers that could like not believe in their product at all and raise a ton of money, right? But it's been crazy like how much easier it gets when you just develop confidence. And the way to develop confidence is having customers who love your product.
Yeah, there's no better validation than somebody entering in their credit card to purchase your product and then also actively using your product as well. I think that applies to both people that raise money and people that don't. There's nothing can replace that feeling of someone legitimately paying you to use your products. It's crazy.
Yeah, so we ended up raising just a little bit from angels at Demo Day and then actually have not raised since because Demo Day made us really, and I should say what didn't happen at Demo Day, meaning like not raising a ton of money, made us be very laser focused on growth and building the metrics where it became easy to fundraise again. Because what's so interesting about like YC Demo Day, this is no secret too. During the batch, investors like cold, DM you on LinkedIn. They're trying to get ahead of YC Demo Day. They're trying to meet you, right? Like the flood of VCs in my inbox having no product was like insane, right? The only way we've been able to recreate that again, where it's like cold inbound, has been just building a good product. And so it's been interesting. It was like, okay, after Demo Day, there was like suddenly no more cold interest. That makes sense. But then we build something people want and like the interest comes back. And that's been a really cool experience to see. Like the foundations matter. Build a good product, build an enduring business, and these things become a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely. You raised some money from YC and from angels, but looking back on it now, I think that there's been a much larger sentiment of anti-VC. You don't need to raise money. VCs are like bad, like they're stealing equity in your company. And now with the rise of AI as well, where each individual employee's output is so much bigger, do you regret raising any money? And do you think that you could have done it without any venture capital money?
Obviously, that's a nuanced question. In my own experience, YC empowered us to start the company. They say, don't apply to YC if you're not going to do it unless you get into YC. I think it's okay to be honest and real in that YC gave us the conviction to become founders, right? That we may not otherwise. I'd be lying if I said anything else, right? But at the same time, we have been very prudent about how much money we're spending, which as a result means we haven't felt the need to raise. So I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying where we can just do so much more. I really do feel like we have like an extra junior engineer on the team because of Cursor. And so as a result, right, like we don't feel the urge to raise another $1 million, $3 million, right? And I think every founder will have a different perspective on this. Of course, there's the approach of raise a lot of money, try and capture the market. I think that makes a lot of sense for like consumer companies where people aren't paying you up front. You need to develop like network effect, right? That is not our approach.
Yeah. I think what you mentioned right there, like there's so many different ways to go about business, and being a founder and building a company is so real, because I think like so many people get caught up and like they're super dogmatic, like you need to do it XYZ way. No, you need to do it like that way. But at the end of the day, I think it's all about figuring out what game you want to play, playing the game by those rules. Like you're right, you raise money and people kind of automatically assume, oh my God, you must be trying to raise like another round again and again and again, like raise a lot of money in terms of going big or going home. But then you've kind of taken the complete opposite approach, and it seems like your approach is much more Zapier, I don't know how to pronounce it, Zapier-esque, where you raise one round, you grow so much that you don't find a need to raise a round again.
I would not have become a founder if I didn't think this would be a $1 billion or $1 trillion outcome, right? That point about how you just shared about Zapier, there's another company I love called like One Leap. And I know they raised from YC, right? And then they didn't raise any additional rounds. And I think people don't like to talk about those stories because it doesn't fit the narrative of raise, right? But you can still have a small, pre-seed and then build an enduring business. Let that be the spark, right? And then go from there. And the great thing is when you're profitable, you have the ultimate leverage, right? Like there are some things that people don't talk about too, which is when your business is sustainable and profitable and you don't need to raise money, suddenly then you can decide whether or not you want to raise money, and you have more leverage and confidence if you do decide to fundraise or not, right? And I don't think enough people think about that.
Yeah.
Right? Where they just think like, no, I can't be profitable because the whole idea is just be spending money at an extraordinary rate.
Yeah, that's so real. And kind of going back to what you were saying, I think 2 points that I found really interesting that I really liked as well. Number one, I like how you said about applying to YC gave you that conviction to pursue a startup. And I think at the end of the day, especially for people that are deciding whether they want to go for a more bootstrapped route or a raising money route, I know sometimes on my YouTube channel I might come off as a VC basher. I'm not. I personally just think that a lot of people raise money unnecessarily when they don't actually have to. But that also depends like who you are as a person. Like, do you need that external validation, which is not a bad thing at all, right? But do you need that backing of YC to be like, yo, like I believe in you as a founder, you can do that? Like, that's an awesome feeling. I'm sure I would have loved getting that feeling as well. But then other people, sometimes you know that you already have that belief going into it beforehand, that you don't really need to raise that money. And if you're like really in it for the long haul, you can bypass that raising money part, just work as a side project on your day job, and then go out and still build on the side continuously until your side hustle becomes your main hustle. But I remember earlier, a couple years back, when you were just at Canopy and like I think just getting to YC, you were mentioning how you are very like a singularly focused individual where you know yourself that you wouldn't be able to do something on the side because when you do one thing, you go like really all in on it and like really deep focus.
Right. That was a big thing that motivated us to start a company is I think my co-founder and I both realized like we love building product, whether it's a company or for our own. Obviously, we love it for our own thing more. It's why we did it. But as a result, we're like, hey, if we're working so much and so excited to build this, like, let's do it full time. To the comment about YC, like giving external validation to folks that may not otherwise start a company. Sure, that's like a fair way, I think, to describe it. I think it's unfortunate because I think in reality, you know, the best founders, like, they don't need the external validation. But what I do think is very fair to say is it de-risks the situation, right? Putting validation aside, when you start a company, you're taking on an enormous amount of risk. Lower salary, right? Like that's a not controversial thing to say. There's a great essay, I think, by Paul Graham where he talks about like equity and, you know, YC. There's some formula and like basically if YC increases your odds by like 9% or 7%, something like that, probably even higher, then it becomes worth it. It's just like a math equation. Did YC increase our odds? Heck yes, it did. 100 million% it did. Yeah. The community is amazing. I feel like I have a million different advisors that I could call on the phone at any minute, other founders. It's a lot of fun. Right? So yes, of course it increased our chances of success, which is why that was like a no-brainer.
Yeah. And then I think a lot of bootstrap founders, particularly the ones that, in my opinion, put their unnecessary stress by quitting with no backup plan and running out of runway. I think a lot of bootstrap founders in general also feel like, oh man, if I raise more money, like I'd be more successful. You know, I'd be able to spend more money here and there, whether that be hiring more people or, I don't know, running paid ads, doing influencer campaigns. I don't necessarily agree with that take because I think that regardless if you have money or not, at the end of the day, is your product good or not? If it's bad, it's gonna die even if you raise $1 billion. At the end of the day, it does not matter. So I was wondering, you know, when you raise money, with the fact that you raise money, do you think that you will be running your company differently if you did not raise money since you already did? Like, do you, aside from being able to pay yourself like a livable wage, what else does this extra money that you did raise, what type of freedoms does it allocate you to have in terms of making business decisions?
Well, it's no secret AI is very, very expensive. One very nice thing about, you know, doing an accelerator like YC is that you're immediately like accepted into all these startup programs. Like for example, AWS, they have a startup program. They give you 200 credits if you're part of YC or other accelerators. I'm sure indie hackers can apply for it as well, right? Like I just don't know offhand. So that's awesome because like credits are amazing, right? When you have nothing, you have no customers, but doing these underlying LLM calls that are expensive, it's great to be able to subsidize it via the credits to get you started, right? YC also, like, I will say it's interesting. I don't think because we've raised money, we approach the money that much differently than as if we were indie hackers. Like, of course, we have more in the bank account, right? Because you get the cash and it's wired to you. But it's so easy to lie to yourself and like buy users, like run ads. Yeah, it's so easy to buy users, like run ads. But then it's unclear like whether you're making something people want or not. We were very disciplined in the first couple of months where we were like spending so little. I think now that we have, you know, decent revenue and have more confidence on like what works, like what ads actually work if we do choose to run ads, what growth mechanisms actually work, then yeah, it's a lot easier to be like, I'll put 10K toward this problem. I'll put 20K toward this problem.
Yeah, because You already had prior validation where you were super disciplined, didn't run ads, and had a lot more organic growth, which I think was primarily through X and LinkedIn. But that organic growth, it gave you that confidence that now you're like, okay, now that I know that we're building something that people want and we have that extra cash on hand, now let's like really blast some ad dollars into it and see if we can make the customer acquisition cost versus LTV equation work out.
Right, and there's a story for everything, you know. We have a competitor who raised a lot of money. They've been at it for 7 years. I'm talking about Bolt.new. They pivoted, amazing story. They have raised a lot of money. They're now like hosting a concert with the Chainsmokers for their hackathon, right? That's amazing. And I'm sure they've done the calculation that will bring them, revenue, right? Maybe the math does make sense. In our instance, we do not have the conviction to drop a bunch of money on like a Chainsmokers concert, right? That's not like the game we're playing right now. There's a story for everything. Fundraising a lot of money early on and spending it to acquire users, being disciplined and growing slowly, but still growing over time because you're building something people want, spending any money ever, right? And still exploding into the stratosphere. So.
Yeah, once again, there's no one right way to do business. You just got to figure out the way that works for you. I think it's like the biggest moral of the story at the end of the day. And you kind of talked a little bit about your marketing that you've done, whether it be paid ads or not. And I kind of want to ask you a question about marketing. What is your approach to marketing your SaaS? Because one of the most common questions I get asked from my audience is, bro, I know how to build. I'm a developer, but I don't know how to market, dude. Like, how do I market as a developer? So I have my own way of marketing. And I think from what I know, our marketing, we do very different types of marketing. Myself and my co-founder, Andrew, Meng Duck on social media. We primarily do organic social media marketing, and lately we've been dabbling in paid ads. Video coming soon where we go over our paid ads progress. But we're very much so in the meta space, like videos on Instagram, paid ads on Instagram, Facebook, videos on TikTok, on YouTube, short form videos. Can you talk a little bit about how you marketed your product and what worked for you?
Yeah, here are the most two important learnings I've had about marketing over the last 2 years building Magic Patterns. Number one, friends and word of mouth is the ultimate marketing. The conversion rate, we ask people like other companies do, how'd you hear about us? If you put friend, you are way more likely to convert, right? Because it's almost like you are the intended audience because someone trusted in your life told you to use Magic Patterns. So that's the number one thing. Number two, and this gets more into your question, right? Like what marketing are we actually trying? Because okay, friend, like that's pretty,
yeah,
that's hard. That's why it works so well. But one other thing I think is super critical about marketing is like tracking everything, meaning best that you can tracking in Post-Hog or whatever product analytics tool you're using, your onboarding and the role and where they found you, right? Because it's pretty hard actually to there's like $1 trillion unfounded business here, which is tracking where actually users came from, but that it leads to a bunch of privacy concerns. But anyway, we track everything. Like we use Reddit, my own personal account, I'll post stuff. LinkedIn, I'll post things. Twitter, I'll post things. Those are all kind of organic, like just me. One thing I've learned is don't be afraid to post things. Be proud of what you're building, right? People say like, oh, I can't post on LinkedIn. My friends are going to make fun of me. My high school friend that I haven't talked to in 10 years is going to see me posting about this random SaaS on LinkedIn, and he's going to make fun of me at the high school reunion. It's like, number one, who cares? Because it works, right? Be proud of what you're building. That was actually one thing that when we were pivoting during YC, we're doing ideas that like we're not crazy about, like, we don't have conviction in. And one rule that we literally had in our like, should we pivot to this idea is, am I proud to post about this on LinkedIn?
Ooh, that's so good. That's so good.
For example, like I am not proud to run a cigarette company. I would never pivot into selling cigarettes. Mm-hmm. Right? That's an extreme example, but you get my point. That's a great test on like whether you're lying to yourself or not, about whether you care about the problem space.
Ooh, wow, that's a banger metric actually. Like I'm going to use that moving forward for any future products that I build. But going back to the marketing channel piece. So it seems like the vast majority of your marketing has been through kind of building in public on X and LinkedIn. And with your Reddit strategy, do you do some like guerrilla marketing tactics where you try to like sneak in, or do you post more, or are you just really active in the various subreddits and stuff like that? What's your Reddit strategy like?
Reddit is a really tough one to crack. I use F5bot to track keywords. So then in my email inbox, it mentions, hey, something, one keyword was mentioned on Reddit. And then I'll determine whether I could craft a really good, thoughtful response to it. What's been really cool is when we first started, it was like the only keywords, we were never mentioned, obviously. Now over time, like I see us mentioned in the wild, and that is a really cool feeling. Yeah. It took about a year to get there. But yeah, and we do organic. I'll say like one thing I'm still learning because I'm come from an engineering background is like we're not very good at SEO. We've never actually run like other than some influencer marketing campaigns, we've never run like paid ads. Mainly just because like we don't know how to do it effectively or like actually calculate whether it's worth it. I would recommend to all people like starting a business, like do the marketing yourself on your own personal things before venturing out into paying for stuff. I think if you're really sophisticated and good at it, yeah, you can use paid ads as like a way to validate your idea, but only if you're good at it. Like do not do paid ads if like you have no idea what you're doing is my recommendation.
So real. It's very easy to lose money on paid ads. I'm a testament to that. I will make a video in the future talking about the paid ads part, and it kind of works, but we also lost a decent amount of money during the process. So totally agree. It's like kind of like that leaky bucket issue. It's like, sure, you might get a lot of users in the top funnel. If you have a hole in the bottom of your bucket, your users mean nothing and you're literally setting money on fire. Actually, how did the influencer marketing work for you? Do you feel like it was worth it, or were you kind of meh about it?
We love it. It's great. Influencer marketing does work. Of course, it's expensive. Obviously, when I post on LinkedIn and it goes semi-viral, or I post on Twitter and it goes viral, that's free and can have a better conversion rate. But there's some virality, like luck involved, right? But what's great about being organic is then also like you build up your own audience. But with the influencer marketing, that's a great thing that like being VC backed enable us to do. It's expensive, and I think it would be very hard if we didn't have like cash in the bank to like justify dropping 10K on a video. The influencer marketing is interesting where like it definitely gets a lot of reach. It definitely like gets page views. It's not super high converting for us right now. I think there's a lot of elements to that. We're more, 80% of users like daily are on desktop versus mobile. It's not like a mobile app. The intended audience can vary across influencers, right? It works in the sense that it is a good way to acquire users if you want to test a new idea and need an influx of users at a given moment.
Yeah. And I think the difficult part about influencer marketing, which you already alluded to, the attribution is really hard. Yeah.
The attribution is impossible almost. Sure, there's the link in bio, right? But then and of course, that's why I think it's necessary. I have a lot more empathy now for any product that asks me, how did you find us? They're asking you because there's literally no other way to know, right? And yeah, so I have a lot of empathy for companies that do that, but it's cool to see influencer marketing. Like it is a great way if you really need users. This is bad though. Do not fall into this trap. Do not buy users because you are effectively just buying users. But I think it's fair to say there are some instances where that's appropriate. Maybe you're A/B testing something, you're experimenting with something, you're validating something, and you don't know how to do regular paid ads, so you're just like dropping influencer money, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is your personal ranking of all the various marketing tactics you do? Can you rank them from best to worst in terms of arbitrary, also like favorite to least favorite, maybe too?
Oh, sure. Well, favorite I'll define as whether I personally like it, doing it, and then best to worst I'll define as that's quantitative through our post-hoc metrics. The best marketing channel for our SaaS is LinkedIn, and I can just tell you that very confidently because that is literally the metrics. I have only ever posted on LinkedIn, like myself, my co-founder also posts. Obviously, we have a company page. What's interesting about LinkedIn, and I said this earlier, like word of mouth and friend, like that is the best marketing, highest converting thing. And LinkedIn in a weird way, like kind of is that, right? Because it's people in my network that know me or, second degree. And it's such a shame that there's like so much rhetoric online of like, LinkedIn is inauthentic. Oh, LinkedIn, like Twitter hates LinkedIn. You can tell who doesn't hate LinkedIn by like they know it works. Like any founder who's ever used LinkedIn and it works never talks poorly about LinkedIn. Right. Yeah. And if they do, well, then it's probably because they're already successful and they're like, I'm beyond that. That's fair, whatever, to each their own. But I've just noticed like it's very rare to get another founder be like, oh, dude, how inauthentic that you post on LinkedIn. Right.
Yeah. Then what's your favorite one? Oh, no. Well, let's finish the list. Best is LinkedIn. What's the rest of the list, and then we'll move on to your favorite.
Reddit works very well if you do it correct. Super easy to get banned in subreddits. That's like, you just got to be thoughtful. It's like you get in what you get out, right? I could go on and on like about number 3, number 4. What's really interesting though, I think it really depends on your business and your strategy. Like, for us, number 3, like, is Twitter. But getting into least favorites, like, I actually don't really enjoy posting on Twitter that much. I think it can be kind of like a toxic and negative environment sometimes.
Least shocking statement of 2025.
Right. That's not
No,
controversial.
no.
Sure, like I do enjoy it. I reply. Other YC founders are on there, indie hackers, right? Like there are moments where I enjoy it, of course. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. But also, like, I think it's important for founders to recognize do what works. And we've experimented with Twitter, and yeah, it kind of works. But recently, I've been putting like way more effort into LinkedIn because that's working better, and I enjoy it more. And so, like, that's why it's so important to have good sense of your metrics. Otherwise, you're steering the ship blindly.
Yeah. Well, what's your tech stack?
Our tech stack is React, TypeScript, Next.js. I wish we did Vite. As we've scaled on dev especially, and we can't use TurboPack because we use Monaco Editor and other plugins. It's so slow, and I've looked at other things. I've looked on Twitter, like it's so slow on dev.
Yeah.
Like I am like 2 Red Bulls away from our 2-year-old code base, like something like 2 million lines of code, refactoring the entire thing to an SPA because it's just so slow on dev. And like, of course, the blog and the landing page, great that it's SSR, and although Vite can do like SSR too, I hear, but like the platform itself, like it's just like so slow. On the server, it is Node.js, Express, TypeScript, Mongo.
Ooh.
We use Sentry, PostHog. We use Slack alerts. I have a blog post on this a lot to get a sense of how our product is being used in real time. Several were firing just as we were chatting right now.
Is it hosted on Vercel?
It's hosted on Vercel. That's great. That's super easy. We use Cloudflare workers for our previews. We use live blocks for multiplayer and a collaborative. We have an infinite canvas like Figma where anyone can create a design with AI, and that's all thanks to live blocks. Although the canvas is a simple div, which I'm very proud of my co-founder for implementing that. He's like, I just read some Medium article plus ChatGPT. It's crazy.
That's nuts. Dang, cool. Okay, what is the primary AI model that is powering Magic Patterns?
This should be no secret. Sonnet 3.5 and 3.7. We use 3.7 for initial creation because it tends to overdo it. It's like amazing at landing pages. I saw today someone prompted for a landing page and then they instantly used our deploy feature to like host it. They're like, hey, I'm moving from WordPress. This was so easy. I just typed one thing and now I'm going to start deploying it. Like Sonnet 3.7 is currently one-shotting applications that are making people move Wix, WordPress. And that's how incredible it is, and I think a sign of the industry, especially like agencies.
Yep. What's your code editor of choice right now?
I use Cursor, but Cursor was down the other day, and then I just installed Windsurf. And then it's interesting. They're very similar, obviously, but there's a few UI differences that I think if you're coding every day, there's actually more friction than I thought.
In Windsurf or Cursor?
In switching between the two.
Yeah.
I remember in college, it was like, you were cool if you used Atom. And then the next week, you were cool if you used Sublime. And then when you learned the, terminal, you're like, or badass if you use Vim. And then everyone's ended up using VS Code because of the TypeScript wave. And so I actually thought for a long time, like IDEs, like there's really no friction. In truth, I downloaded Windsurf in like 2 minutes. But it's interesting. It's like, it kind of threw me off like Cascade. That's like Windsurf's chat thing. What is that? Okay, it applies slightly differently. Agent is on by default. Like things like that. So I keep defaulting back to Cursor, but the minute it's down, I'll just switch back to Windsurf like no problem.
I had a video that I posted, did not get a lot of views, but a video that I posted where I talked about my hot take with AI code editors. The difference between them is actually very small, and the largest difference is just in distribution and like laziness to switch to another one, but because the gain is not big enough to switch to another one right now. So it's really just like UI differences, which one you're more comfortable with, because I feel the same way. I default to Cursor. I tried Windsurf for like a week. No notable difference in performance. It's just the UI was like a little different here and there. So I feel you on that. What is the most stereotypical tech bro thing about you?
That I used to dress and still do sometimes extremely poorly. Like athleisure everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky in that my wife has started like buying clothes for me. And that has made me much less of a tech bro. I'm very happy about that.
I was gonna say your little shirt on top of your shirt, it looks nice.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the the podcasting outfit. I am wearing shorts
Oh
though.
yeah, as you should. So am I.
But the tech bro thing about me is like before Allbirds, Lululemon, Arc'teryx, every day, all day, right? And it's actually been really fun, like feeling nice about how you
Mhm.
dress. But I'm still a tech bro
Yeah.
where you'll still catch me wearing the standard issue
Yeah.
outfit, Patagonia vest.
Yeah. What is something about you that would get your dev card revoked? Like my answer for this one is I do not care about clean code and I don't write tests. I think a lot of that upsets a lot of people, but I don't care to do that. And that would technically get my developer card revoked in a lot of groups.
Commenting on that because I have this philosophy. I actually think a startup engineer versus a FANG engineer, big tech engineer, so different in that you saying that, yeah, we write tests, but in the very beginning, we weren't writing tests. And I definitely wouldn't have revoked your dev card. In fact, if you were in the earliest stages of our company working as an engineer and you were like wasting a lot of time crafting the perfect unit test, I would not revoke your dev card. In fact, I'd be like, good job. Let's ship this feature, right?
Yeah.
In the earliest days, of course, there's table stakes things like security, making sure things like that work, right? What would revoke my dev card? This is so embarrassing. It makes me hesitant to share it, but I will. Right after working, I was working at LiveRamp, and I actually interviewed for another job. It wasn't a startup. And they asked me, the interview question live was implement tic-tac-toe in React. I bombed the interview so hard. And part of me wants to say, oh, I was nervous or whatever. It was just like, in reality, when I was working at LiveRamp, unfortunately, like I wasn't getting a lot of exposure to like writing code every day. And sure, you can say like, dude, this is why I would revoke my dev card. Oh my God, you were a developer for a year at LiveRamp and you couldn't implement React tic-tac-toe on the fly? Yeah, I couldn't. Revoke my dev card, right? That actually motivated me to like, I think end up joining a startup and then starting my own because I'm just coding way more and like working on whatever I want to work on. You know, what's interesting now, like would I ever implement React Tic-Tac-Toe from scratch? No, I would just like have Cursor implement it. Of course, though, they're not testing that. They're testing how do you set state with an array, doing a copy, use effect, blah, 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 right? But yeah, that would revoke my dev card and I'm like so embarrassed to share that story.
Thank you for being so brave and sharing that. Last question. What is the worst money that you have spent on your business?
Here's the worst money I've spent on our business. We hit up a Twitter influencer to list us in like top AI tools. And we paid them money to feature us in one of those threads, which by the way, I've now learned through this, those threads are largely paid like the top spots.
I had no idea
right?
they were paid. Holy shit.
Well, I don't know about all of them,
Right.
right? I'm sure in many instances they're not. I can tell you that in some instances they are. The top spots, at least, it was not worth it at all. Like, I just know there's no spike in page views. Even the tweet itself didn't do that well. Of course, you're betting on virality there, right? Like, that's the risk. But talk about, like, a really bad performing paid ad. And talk about like the importance of not understanding how it would convert, right? Like I literally felt like I just like lit money on fire because I was so desperate of like, oh my God, there's all these AI coding tool threads. Why aren't we being featured? And it all started by hitting up someone and saying, hey, can you feature us? We're an AI coding tool too. Maybe you haven't heard of us. And it turned into, oh, I'll feature you in a top spot for money.
Wow.
Right? And of course, in the moment, I'm like, well, my job here is to be featured. Like, it feels weird to not be featured.
Nice. Good answer. All right. Well, thanks so much for coming to chat, man. It's been good to catch up and just to, talk more about your experience as a founder that's raised money and then on my end being a totally bootstrap founder. I mean, I think at the end, I feel like, yeah, there's certain differences here and there, but at the end of the day, it truly does not matter. The end goal is the same. Build something that people want, get people to pay for it. And that's really all it is. Like the marketing is not that different. There's nothing different in the marketing and nothing different in the building part of it. We're all literally just on the same mission of building something, getting it out there and trying to get people to sign up for it. And at the end of the day, it's just about figuring out the game that you want to play and what will help enable you to become a founder and build that business that you've always been wanting to build.
Exactly. It's almost an implementation detail.
Ooh, that's
like
good.
as a developer,
Yeah.
right? It's an implementation detail of, are you going the route of raising money, and then after that, do you raise more money and more money and more money? Or are you going like bootstrapped? Like at the end of the day, the whole thing falls apart if you are building something that like no one wants, right? And I highly encourage people to, I'm gonna sound like I'm drinking the Kool-Aid because I did do YC. Like read some of Paul Graham's essays. You would think as like the, godfather of the most legendary VC incubator, he would be like, raise money, VC, VC, VC. He's not. Like there's so many cases where he's like, don't buy users, start small, don't spend money, right? Don't raise a lot. It will kill you. Probably an uncommon thing that maybe some people don't know. You get to YC and like some of their top advice is like, don't raise money, right? Like, yeah. Anyway, I could go on and on about this subject. I know you said wrap up. I'm sure you have to go.
No, we'll wrap up. We'll wrap up. Awesome. Thanks again for coming. And everyone, if you want to check out Alex's product, then go to magicpatterns.com. Right?
Yeah, see you there at magicpatterns.com. If you message our support chat, you'll be hearing from me directly, and we love talking to users. So thanks very much. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks so much. All right. See you.